Thank you, Donna. So I might look at weird places because I've got two screens, so I might not be looking at the camera when I'm talking. My name is Renuka Badhe, and it's a pleasure to talk to all of you. I think I participated in the last meeting, and it was amazing to hear everyone's talks. And that made me change my talk a little bit to suit, to kind of keep up with the young ones that were talking the last week. I work currently as the executive secretary of an organization called the European Polar Board. And I'm also quite active on social media, generally on Twitter or Facebook or um, other things, which I use mostly as communication tools as a part of my job. So if you do follow me, you won't find cat pictures anywhere. You'll normally find polar news. I am that boring. Um, so yeah, so the EPB is based in the Netherlands. We are an organization of our members. We have 27 members from different European countries, and we basically bring together all of our members on a single table and help in collaborating with everyone. We provide a single point of contact for anyone from the outside who would like to talk to the European polar researchers, and we also provide this unified voice for European polar research. So that's in short. Where do I come from? I love the sea. So where would I come from? Probably the place which is furthest from the sea in India. And I don't know if you can see this, but that's where I come from. It's literally as far as you can go from both coastal areas. That's my birthplace, and I used to live there right until I completed my master's. It's a place called Nagpur, and this is how colorful and the standard Indian thing of colorful cities, crowded cities. This is a bit of my family. This is my mom and I, and this was my dad and I. This is incidentally the last picture I've taken with my dad. He passed away a few weeks ago. So it's kind of nice to be able to show him off here. This is just me and my cousins. This is my little sister. And yeah, it was a standard childhood. Um, I loved wearing clothes, Indian clothes, and I still do, as you can see. And, I've always been classed as the classic tomboy, uh, playing around in, outside. I used to always love being outside of the house. So that kind of transferred into my interests in environmental science and conservation, nature, and such like. So it was right from the childhood that I loved to be in parks and in green spaces and play outside. So how did I get here where I am? I've got quite a the best way to explain it is I didn't go the straight path. I kind of did this and that and that and three other things. So I've got basic education at bachelor's and master's level in environmental science, chemistry, and zoology. Um, I also have an MPhil in economics with specialization in public policy. I then went on to do a PhD in phytoplankton biophysics, kind of classed under biological oceanography, I guess. And then I also have, because I love to keep learning, I did some project management work. I also did a diploma uh, in international diplomacy, and I've also done lots of little classes on leadership and such. My experience has been both in the research arena. So I used to work in the Naval Materials Research Lab in India. Um, I've worked in coordination for conferences, and then I've also worked in organizations like SCAR and now the EPB. So in total, I've lived and worked in 3 different countries. and several cities in those countries. And I can kind of say that I've had a multidisciplinary education, I have a multicultural outlook, and I've got a multi-sectoral experience. So what exactly do I do? I work with some very experienced people, but can also work with lots of very nice friends. You know, you end up, when you keep working with all of these people, they all tend to become your friends. And that's kind of was a point that I brought up last time as well, that you've formed a really nice network. And remember, you'll be working with these people for many, many years to come. So it's an amazing network that you already have. Keep following it up. I also get invited to do a lot of talks. And I gave a little example of what can go wrong at talks just now before we started. And then this work is very tiring. So this was a picture taken by my then boss. This was at a conference which was a total of 15 days, no Sundays, and we were working about 14 to 15-hour days. And this was, I think, day 12 or day 13 or something. So it was about 10 o'clock at night. I just gave up and I slept off on the desk. So yeah, it is tiring. So if you're aiming to do something like this, you have to have a lot of energy. But you do get to meet really amazing people. You do get to go to some amazing places as well. So I think all in all, it kind of balances out. So a little bit more in detail about what I do. So I kind of stand in between. If you look at science and data, then you have the policy, law, and governance, and then you have the society. So I kind of stand in the middle of all these three. And what I try to do is basically, when you have different aspects of the same picture being looked at by different people, it's like the case of the elephant and the three blind people. If you don't know exactly what you're looking at, if you're not aware of what you're looking at, and if you're not able to place yourself in someone else's context, it's kind of difficult to see what people are looking at. So that's kind of what I do. I try to explain to people what really is going on. I explain the situation from different perspectives, so I get people to understand things a lot easier. So yeah, I think having that multicultural, multi-sectoral background really helps me understand these things. And this was my first question here. Do you think, I think it's a big pro to have this background where I can kind of understand very different things. How have your experiences been? Can you give me a couple of quick stories on anything where you've faced these kind of cultural differences in your life so far? Shall we do the question later if no one's ready? Yeah, Alicia?
Hi. So yeah, I really relate to what you just said, really, because I spent about 2.5 years of my life in Mauritius. And it was quite early on in my education, so it wasn't sort of disruptive or anything, but I went to an international school at first, and then I went to a state school the following year. And in the international school, you're surrounded by people from all over the world. And I felt more comfortable there than I did at the state school, because in the state school, everybody else was a local and I was kind of an outsider the whole time I was there. So yeah, I definitely think that cultural differences can be a pro, because I felt more comfortable surrounded by people of lots of different nationalities than I did in a school where everyone else was the same apart from me. So yeah.
Yeah, that would have been an amazing challenge, I guess, but it would have also been an amazing opportunity to show everyone how different people think as well. So that's a great example. Thank you, Alicia. So what else do I do? Um, I've also co-founded something called the Women in Polar Science Network many years ago now with three of my other colleagues. And I'm also quite an active mentor on the Association of Polar Early Career Scientists. So have a look at those websites if you like. Give us a follow on the Women Polar Science Media. And if you have any questions about any of these, I'm happy to answer afterwards. So now let's come to you. What are your options? You're now studying. Um, you have several different options. You can either remain in research. You can do the standard academic research pathway. You can do research in industry. You can do kind of what I call as hands-off science. So you can work in science policy, kind of like what I do. You can work in education or science technology consulting, parents or IP or communication and publishing. So not publishing as a scientist, but working as an editor with one of the journals to help other people publish. Or you could leave science altogether, but we won't deal with that here. What are your other options? Oh, I've just done this one. Sorry for that. How do you improve your chances within science? I think to improve your chances, the first thing is you have to know yourself and what you can bring to the table. So this is a really amazing cartoon, not just cartoon, but it's a very nice article on a website called Wait But Why. And I would really recommend all of you to go and read up this article. It's a long article, but it's really amazing. Um, it explains exactly what the kind of paradoxes there are that you want a career, but in reality you aren't. You're not prepared for it in the sense that you don't have the correct education, or you don't have any other. Um, you may need some specific skills for the career you want. So it gives you a good way of looking at yourself and kind of trying to identify what your options are in between this, what you want and what the reality offers. But then don't think that you're limited to just that. You know, this is something that you can keep speaking about, you keep thinking about as you evolve. You can keep changing um, your skills, or when you aim a few years ahead, you can always strategize. You have to change with how things are changing. About 6 months ago, 99% of the people in the world had no clue what Zoom was, and now everyone is using Zoom. So things change and people have to keep up with it. So that's kind of really a good way of looking at yourself, selecting a goal, then re-strategizing if things change. If you change, your own situation might change. You might have a family or something, and then you have to re-evaluate what your options are. Your experiences might change, and that will make you re-evaluate. So it's really important that you kind of note down, you understand yourself, and you note down what you have. You always need subject matter, and it's useful to have knowledge of more than one sector. You'd need some research skills, I guess. You need some intellectual skills like problem solving or analysis. Then you need some transferable skills. So designing small projects, teamwork, budget management, you have time management. But don't forget that you develop all these skills outside of your studies as well. If you're participating in any activities, in any team sports, you're already trying to strategize your time. You're setting up your timetables. You're ensuring that you're setting time aside for music practice, for example, or for some sport, or whatever else uh, your interests are. So you have those skills not just within the academics that you do, but also all of your activities outside. So think of everything you do, not just skills that you develop in academia. It's always good to have some multi-sectoral skills. I know not everyone might be like that, but if you would like to follow something of the kind of job that I do, it's always useful to have these skills that span several sectors. There's ways of doing it without getting degrees in things like I did. You can just have an idea of what's going on in other fields. And a good idea of that you can get through collaborating. So you can have either formal collaborations or informal collaborations. You have formal collaborations, you can utilize collaborations that are existing between your universities, for example, different organizations that you work with. If there are any funded positions available like visiting fellows or such, you can utilize them, or the Erasmus program, for example. But collaborations can also come through disciplinary interactions. If you have if your project is something which is you think is very specific, say Hugh studies what do you study, Hugh? Whatever, some slimy creature in the ocean,
Yes, that's it.
right? He studies that, but then I can say to Hugh, what's the importance of that? Why should the taxpayer fund you? So then Hugh has to find a reason for, okay, so climate is affecting this thing that I study, and then if climate affects that, it'll affect the food web, it'll affect maybe fishing in the Southern Ocean, and that'll affect people. So that's one way of kind of trying to find other aspects of how your research is affected, and you can gain that little multi-sectoral knowledge that I was talking about before. But you can also mix up, you can mix up, you can add some multidisciplinarity to your current project. So this was my next question. Can I have like a little topic of maybe a little project that someone's doing in their studies now? So we can kind of work on a live example of how you can introduce multidisciplinarity in your work.
I have something that I'm working on, not in my studies.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned in my talk last week about the fact that I was housing officer at my university a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to do at the moment is I'm trying to do a blog post about how housing standards really aren't prepared for climate change. And so I'm trying to sort of like use my experience as housing officer with my studies to try and sort of gather a lot of evidence together. And I'm trying to build a website, and that's going to be my first sort of post on there.
Perfect. So you're kind of picking up you're picking up several strands. So you're working on your academic knowledge of climate science,
Yeah.
plus your experience of housing and how housing works, and you're kind of bringing in the policy and societal aspects. So that's a really nice example of how you can bring in several strands of things that you're doing work in, and bring them together and kind of understand why you're bringing all these different things together. So you can, some examples. Thanks, Louise. That's a nice example. Some examples, if you want to stay within the scientific arena, if your project is on pure physics, you can kind of bring maybe some policy aspects in it, or biology, you can bring policy aspects in it, like I talked about Hugh's project. And then if you have pure mathematics, you can bring maybe modeling in it and try and find some real life applications of those models. So there's a lot of, if you kind of go outside your comfort zone, and there can be quite a lot of these aspects that you can mix in your current work. So let's come to a little bit of informal collaboration. So this is something that I said, you've got such an amazing cohort of people that you've already kind of bonded really well, and you've formed a network within yourself. So this is something that's incredibly important. You're talking to each other. You all have similar kind of you have similar-ish goals. You all like the polar regions. You would love to interact with each other. I'd say keep this going, because this is a very valuable tool in your hands. 10 years down the line, some of you will be PIs, principal investigators somewhere. Some of you will be working in jobs like I'm doing. Some of you will be working in, position that Hugh is in, or something like Donna is doing. So your network is going to be amazing if you keep it up. So you can, if you want to further expand your network, if you want to particularly approach mentors and such, you have to ask. So you have your little network amongst yourself, but you have to also go beyond that. And these are a few kind of tips on how to do that. So you have to tag your approach. So don't just approach someone. If there's someone that you'd really love to talk to, give them a good reason for them to want to talk to you too. So you have to explain why you'd like to talk to them, and then it gets the interest of the other person better. You have to prepare your questions that you want to ask. So it's much better to say, you are an expert in A, B, and C. I've tried to find this information already. Do try before asking people. But I wasn't able to understand this aspect of kind of your job. So is it possible for, that we talk to each other? So when you approach someone, they can see that you've put in some effort already, that you're not asking them to do what you should have done. And that's really appreciated by everyone, that you're really asking people exactly what they can answer. And I know Hugh is jumping up and down to ask a question. Go on,
No,
Hugh.
just to completely support that. There is nothing worse when you're busy doing science and you're really into your work, or you've got loads of admin rubbish to do as well, and somebody emails you and they don't really know what they want from you.
Yeah.
And they
Give me a
haven't
job.
tried even Googling this thing beforehand, saying, do you know any papers on this subject? And you're like, yes, I'm not Google Scholar though. If you came back to me with a specific problem because you've gone to Google Scholar and you can't get any further, then I'm the person to ask. But I'm not your first, that level of doing a bit of research about the person you're going to ask. So you're checking you're asking them the right thing, and doing a little bit of checking that there's nothing obvious you could have found out on your own will make the person really happy to help you.
Also mention that you've done that check.
Yeah, really emphasize I've come to you because I know you're the person who's most likely to be qualified to help me. And this is what I've done so far. And then you're like, wow, this person's really keen and smart and everything else. But you do get a lot of emails as a scientist going, can you just answer my master's thesis for me? I haven't looked at anything yet, but I'm sure you know all the answers. And Renuka will tell you that we get things like that all the time.
Very often. Far too often. Yeah. So the key is to ask very specific questions and to inform people of what kind of stuff you've already done. If they are unable to answer your question, ask them about anyone else that you can contact and whether you can use them as reference. So for example, you may ask me a question, but I may not know the answer. But if you ask me that, I can say, okay, go and ask Hugh. He will know this. And then ask me whether you can give my reference to Hugh, because then you're much more likely again to get a response from Hugh, because he sees that you've done due diligence there. Keep records of who you speak to. Particularly the polar world and academia in general is extremely close-knit. Extremely. You have no clue who knows someone else. So keep records of who you speak to, because you can then use their network as well later on. acknowledge people. So if I spend some time in responding to you or talking to you about something, please acknowledge that. It feels nice, you know, just to acknowledge it. Maybe give me an email 6 months later about if something nice has happened to you, or if you've done something amazing. It's kind of nice to hear back from people that you've mentored as well. And keep in touch, because you never know what, you know, you might require some quick help from someone, and just keep in touch with your mentors if you're speaking to them, or if you're particularly networking with people. As basic as it's a group of friends you have, and you're maintaining that friendship. Networking is kind of given a bit of a flack, but it's not bad. It's not all bad. It's basically you're making a good group of friends within your colleagues. So yeah, you have what it takes. Don't miss any opportunities. If there's any question you have, you should ask, because at any time, at best, you know, you can get a yes answer. At worst, you can get a no, but if you don't ask a question, it'll always be no. So there's no chance of you getting a yes response. Understand what each skill, what you gain, what skill you gain from each little bit of experience you have. Learn to package and sell yourself a bit more. Be very confident in your abilities, and make those networks and build them and maintain them. People build networks but forget to maintain them. Maintain them, and that is what will take you much further than anyone else. So yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, we can do some questions and such now.